Okay, let's finish up here the week 6 material. We're going to talk about media. So if you can go to slide number 38, we'll talk about this. But when we're talking about media, the news, journalism, okay, it's really important in a free society. If for no other reason than in a free society, there should be the free exchange of information, and having journalism and having a free press basically allows for the public not just to be educated, but it also holds, politicians' feet to the fire, if obviously they're engaged in some form of corruption or some form of sleight of hand. Okay, so again, all you have to do is compare the media in the United States in 2020, with all of its flaws, with the media in 1930s Germany, or the media in 1920s, 1930s Soviet Union, or 1960s Soviet Union, right? Where they suppress freedom of speech, or whatever is pumped out of the media is simply political correct fodder in alignment with the Nazi Party or communism or the Communist Party, right? Again, American media has its flaws, but in a free society, we're allowed to freely communicate and get the free flow of information. So if you see on slide 38, the news media has several functions, okay? Signaling, okay, the press brings relevant events and problems into public view, okay? The common carrier, in other words, citizens and politicians are enjoying, the whether it's reading the same newspaper, being in the same, TV commercial show, whatever. In other words, it's a common carrier that both citizen and politician utilize. It's a watchdog. Okay, the press scrutinizes, official behavior for evidence of deceitful, careless, or corrupt acts, and they can be partisan. Okay, is that the press promotes particular interests and values, probably more so now than ever, okay? And the traditional media, such as print and broadcast, they contribute mainly to the first three functions, whereas new news media, such as cable and the internet, tends to be more partisan, okay? There's a distinction there. So if you go to slide number 39, this is kind of reiteration of what I just said, but in a democracy, in a free society, okay, democracy depends on the free flow of information for the citizenry. And so the framers believed that truth, which was necessary for enlightened self-government, would best be served by having competition in the marketplace of ideas and let the best idea win. Okay, so a good example of this is in John Milton's Areopagitica. Remember John Milton and Areopagitica from our earlier series of lectures talking about freedom of speech and no prior restraint, is that the government cannot muzzle the media. Okay, it must be allowed to print what it prints. Not that it can't be dealt with later, not that it can't be sued later, but a free society does not engage in prior restraint. So this is what he said, okay? Though all the winds of doctrine were let loose to play upon the earth, so truth, capital T truth, interesting, capital T truth, be in the field, we do injuriously by licensing and prohibiting to misdoubt her strength. Let her in falsehood grapple, whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter. Okay, in other words, if it's true, you don't have to worry about it because it's going to overcome falsehood. It's going to overcome lies. It's going to overcome deception by virtue of it being the truth, okay? And so that's this idea of the media. That's this idea of the press, okay? So if you go to slide number 40, what we need to realize is the press, when America first began, okay, was very, very partisan. Okay, and it has gradually developed to more of an objective form of news, but it was partisan, whether it's pro-federalist or pro-anti-federalist back in the founding, for the very practical reason that it was very, very expensive to, print a newspaper. So they needed funding. Where did the funding come from? Political parties. And the political parties, hey, if I'm going to give you money, there's strings attached. You better promote my cause. So the founding era was filled with newspapers and the like that were very, very partisan. But the American people knew it. They knew if they're reading, the National Gazette by Philip Freneau. It was very partisan to Jefferson. Or if they were reading the Gazette of the United States, it was very, very partisan to Alexander Hamilton. Okay, people just knew that. Okay, and so that's, so if you read it, you'd see the word "we" used a lot. Okay, because again, it was trying to promote that particular viewpoint, and you can see that in slide number 41. Okay. If you go to slide number 42, there was a lot of technological innovations that occurred in the 1800s that brought about, it lowered the cost of journalism. It lowered the cost of printing a newspaper. So they did not have to be beholden or rely upon, political parties for their funding. So you can begin to become more objective, okay? And so, there was all kinds of, a shift in how they printed newspapers. There was also a shift in an attempt to become more objective. Okay, it didn't always happen. There was a period called yellow journalism within our history in the 1800s, late 1800s, which emphasized sensationalism over facts. But there was a move away from partisanship. Okay, so if you go to slide number 43, you can see what they call the rise of the objective journalism era. Okay, so the excesses of yellow journalism, again, all this sensationalism, led publishers to devise ways to basically get people news more responsibly. So one way they did that is they separated the newspaper's advertising department from its news department, okay, thus reducing the influence of advertisers on news content. The second step is engaging in something called objective journalism, okay? This is based on the reporting of facts rather than opinions, that is fair, and it presents both sides of the partisan debate, okay? Think what Fox News tries to do, okay? They call it fair and balanced. Or something else they've said, we report, you decide. Now, are they partisan? Sure they are. But that's the general idea of objective journalism. Let me just get you the facts, and then you make the call, okay? I'm not gonna try to, slant you toward a particular opinion. And so if you go to the next slide there, that would be, what would that be? Slide number 44. In the 1820s and the 1830s, it was the rise of journalism schools that started promoting something called facts, okay, and statistics. The thinking is facts or statistics reveal reality completely uncontaminated by traditions, biases, of the realm of the priest or the prince. This idea of, statistics is neutral, or so goes the argument. Okay, so the idea of modern facts are open to everyone and are a foundry for a modern democracy. Okay, that's the argument there. Okay, and so if you go to the next slide, under objectivity, journalists adopt the pose of a scientist and vow to eliminate their own beliefs and values as guides in ascertaining what was said and done. This supposedly avoided all subjective judgments and analysis, and the journalist just strives to become a rigorously impartial, expert collector of the information. In other words, the journalist is not part of the story. They're just trying to get you into the story, okay? Or so goes the argument. Okay, we know today that, journalism is hardly objective. If you go to slide number 46, a researcher named Mary Povey revealed that modern facts are hardly objective, as they are loaded with theoretical assumptions about the nature of reality and the preconditions for knowledge. Journalists presume that there is an objective world out there that can be accurately represented through the naming and the categorizing of names and people and places. Okay, so in other words, journalists emphasize certain things. Even though they're presenting the facts, they're still emphasizing certain content, certain people, certain stories. Obviously editors pick which stories they want to run, and they also pick which stories they choose to withhold. Okay, does that affect people's thinking? Yeah. Is that objective? Hardly. Okay. Again, here's an example. Okay, if you're reporting on immigration, okay, illegal immigrants, are you calling them undocumented aliens, illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, or are you calling them dreamers, right? If you're calling them dreamers, you're probably more from a liberal slant, and you're trying to promote making a softer expression of illegal immigration, calling them dreamers. In other words, it's harder for the American people to get upset at people that are supposedly dreaming for a better life than if you call them illegal immigrants, okay? And so, today, again, going to slide number 47, news stories tend to reflect an ideological account of reality based on the journalist's worldview. Okay, again, remember, worldviews are like noses, everyone has one, okay? And the question is, whose version of reality are you getting? Okay, and I provided some examples here, New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, CNN, USA Today, Fox, whatever, okay? In other words, is their version of reality being promoted? Sure it is, okay? But again, what you need to do, again, is to look at a wide spectrum of news sources, not social media, okay? Don't you dare get your news from social media. But go to those major outlets, and again, use a broad spectrum of them to give you a more accurate picture of reality, okay? Here's an example of the bias in the news. Is there fake news? Is there bias? The answer is yes, and it depends on what you mean, okay? It depends on what you mean based on your viewpoint. It depends on what you mean based on your political viewpoint. But by and large, there's a lot of bias coming out. Okay, I'll give you an example of this. Okay, to me, I thought this was remarkable, and hopefully the link is still up. But this is, shortly after President Trump was elected, Mika Brzezinski was talking to Joe Scarborough on the show, on their show. Okay, I'm trying to remember the name of the show, but anyway, so what Mika Brzezinski said was basically it's the job of the media to control what people think, which is, first of all, very transparent and also kind of scary. Okay, but this is what she said. So they're talking about President Trump and how he's reaching out to the American people to be skeptical of the press, right? Fake news, okay? And so they were concerned that perhaps the people would start trusting Trump over the media, okay? Because again, just like everybody, the media's kind of control their turf. And if they see anyone trying to get on their turf, they're going to there's pushback. So Joe Scarborough says, exactly. That's exactly what I hear from all the Trump supporters that I talk to who are Trump voters and are still Trump supporters. They go, yeah, you guys are going crazy, meaning the media. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And then this is what Mika Brzezinski said. Well, I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media and trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job, okay? And as she says it, and hopefully you can get the video, she's kind of like, almost like, she has this look like, oh my gosh, did I actually say this on live TV? But she candidly admitted at MSNBC, journalists are trying to control what people think, okay? And so that's why you have to be very, very wary of journalism today. And the fact that there are biases and worldview assumptions being pushed out there at you, trying to get you to go a certain direction, and you've got to be aware of that, okay? That's just healthy, okay? Couple of